But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our special guest. You've seen him here before, Nico House. He's a commentator, a journalist. He also organized the largest Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign effort. Let's go ahead and bring him in. What's up, Nico?
What's going on, Sabby? Happy 4 Bunny, everybody. I mean, it's like, it's together. So now you got to say 4 Bunny. That's what I call it. You celebrate Easter.
It's weird and crazy. I was like, I can't believe Easter is on 420, but here we are.
On Sunday. Like, it's like, I mean, at least everybody going to have a really good Easter dinner. They're going to enjoy that Easter.
People may have gone to church this morning and then they came home. And
exactly right. So, but happy Easter, everybody.
Oh my gosh. So Nico, you had this tweet here. I want to bring this up for everyone to see. Nico responded to this statement from Donald Trump. You guys know what's happening, right? Like Donald Trump is criticizing Harvard University. We went over that story before, but this happened recently. He goes on to say that Harvard is basically anti-Semitic. You guys listen to this.
That was wrong. Why are you considering changing the tax status of Harvard?
Because I think Harvard's a disgrace. I think what they did was a disgrace. They're obviously anti-Semitic, and all of a sudden they're starting to behave. But when you see what they were saying, what they were doing, when you see the way they took care of events, when you watch that woman, that horrendous president that ruined the image of Harvard, maybe permanently, in Congress, in the halls of Congress, when you take a look at what happened there, it was horrific. And, I've looked at a lot having to do with it. I'm not involved in it. It's being handled by lawyers. I read about it just like you did. But tax exempt status, I mean, it's a privilege. It's really a privilege. And it's been abused by a lot more than Harvard, too, by a lot more than Harvard. So we'll see how that all works out.
Okay, that was the statement there from Donald Trump calling Harvard anti-Semitic. And then, Nico, you issued a response. You said if the Harvard students all of a sudden started calling the Black students the N-word for participating in BLM protests, Trump would not give a single fuck, shit, or damn. But for some reason, Zionists get special protective victim status. Nobody else is entitled to. Funny that. I want to get into that, Nico, because I think we can all see what is happening here, the lengths that the U.S. government is willing to go to when it comes to what they consider to be anti-Semitism, which we do not. You see what they're willing to change laws. They're willing to withhold money from universities. But you had a point there, like they would never go to like those extremes for Black people.
Yeah. And I think it's also worth mentioning the fact that he's actually trying to pursue this anti-Semitic narrative, right? And you see the way that he referred to the ex-president. He's referring to, because the ex-president was Black, a Black woman, right? But he's continuing to call the university anti-Semitic, forgetting that the new president is Alan Garber. For those of you who don't know, Alan Garber is Jewish. And the entire staff has backed his decision-making regarding how to deal with these matters regarding Harvard, the claims that merely protesting genocide is anti-Semitic, but Trump won't mention his name. Trump won't refer to him. He's calling what the previous president did a mistake or a disgrace or whatever, and yet won't even mention Alan's name. Why is that? Because then obviously, one, he can't really pull those emotional heartstrings from his, from that side of his base as racist, looking for a way to use to weaponize race in order to divide people on this particular issue, forgetting that there are Black Jews who are discriminated against by white Ashkenazi Jews, for example, that never get mentioned. And if at the end of the day, it's like I said, there has been, this is the only case probably in the last 30 or 40 years where a university had their tax exempt status threatened. The last successful case was Bob Jones University in South Carolina. And it was literally the most extreme possible case you could think of. They literally refused to allow interracial marriage, and they had their tax exempt status revoked. There's been nothing like that to happen ever since. The threat of this, and the only reason that was able to go through is because people get their tax exempt status from a 501c3, right? You have to follow federal law. The law, like you can't be like people can't get married. In this particular case, it is only an ideological difference that has no federal precedent, no court precedent, no judicial precedents whatsoever. Is Trump just being Trump on a fit because he doesn't like the way Harvard is handling business, and he doesn't like the fact that they're all joining up together, getting behind their president and pushing back. And so not only is he trying to reject funds from them, but he's actually telling them to vet the ideologies of their students better when they accept them. That's insane.
Yeah, it's true. And you brought up Bob Jones. I used to live in South Carolina. I don't know if everyone is familiar with Bob Jones. Very strict establishment. I remember when I was on the debate team, we had to debate Bob Jones.
We did too.
You did too.
Yeah. Yo, I was like, yo, that school is weird as fuck.
Yeah, no, because both of us. Wait, that's right. Because both of us went to high school in North Carolina.
Oh yeah, duh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
You're good. Bob Jones' school. For those of you who don't know, Bob Jones' school you go to from like 4 years old until you graduate college. You don't leave Bob Jones. It's a cult, basically.
Yeah, and it's very strict because I know like the girls there was one line for the girls and one line for the boys, and then like you can't
and
have.
they wouldn't let the girls and the boys be debate partners. Like you can only be a debate partner with the same sex. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first experience with Bob Jones University. And I know me and my friends on the debate team, we were just kind of like, what is up with this school? Like, yeah.
I debated them in high school and in college, and it's like worse in college. They're actually like more strict in college.
Yeah. Yeah, but to Nico's point, we haven't seen them go this extreme, right? So it's like willing to do anything, withhold funds from Harvard. And I know Harvard has the largest endowment, but I explained on the show how endowments actually work. But the reality is it's not just Harvard. They're withholding funds from other schools too, but Harvard's getting all the attention because it's Harvard. But the thing is like, to your point, the president.
So the withholding funds is one thing, but getting rid of the tax exempt status is actually more sinister. And the reason why is because that 501c3 tax exempt status, it stops them from having to pay taxes as a nonprofit. But what it does as well is takes away the donors, right, ability to claim tax exempt, to be tax exempt from the donations that in the endowments they give to the school. So now you're disincentivizing people. These people give not like 100,000, 200, they're like $1 million donors that otherwise they might not be donating that much money anymore because they no longer get that tax exempt protection from the donations that they otherwise would have gotten. So like, they're like, cause that's what I was thinking at first. I'm like, well, they're getting like billions of dollars in donations a year. Like the endowments make up a lot of Harvard's money. And then you figure out, oh shit, those endowments won't be tax free anymore. So that could change everything for Harvard specifically, and it's really kind of a message to the rest of the elite schools because it's a private and public school thing. Like everybody can get it at this point. If this precedent is set where you can just take away someone's tax exempt status based off of some abstract ideological claim that they're not behaving the way you want them to, that is scary going forward because not every college is Harvard, right? So you got your HBCUs, for example, that could be affected in the same way. And those endowments for those colleges are way more important than for Harvard. Harvard's going to be all right. But, maybe Fayetteville State University, it wouldn't go down like that.
And the tax exempt status is a response to, in my opinion, Harvard receiving an increase of endowments since the crackdown on, the anti-Semitism and then withholding some of the federal funding. So their donations actually increased after that happened. So he's like, okay, I'll come after your tax exempt status. And I want to explain to people what that's used for too. When I worked at these universities, anytime you purchase something, whether it's supplies for the labs, anytime you purchase foods for the events that they have on campus, there's a number on your basic, like your credit card for the school. So, right. So if you have to purchase things as an employee, you get a credit card that's for the school. And it may be a Visa, MasterCard, or whatever, but there's a tax exempt number that's on that card. So every time you make a purchase, you enter that tax exempt number so that you don't have to pay the taxes on what you're purchasing. So think about all the supplies that they purchase for those labs, all the food that they have to, like everything that they buy. Imagine how much they would be spending if they had to pay the taxes on it. So that's going to have an effect on everything.
Yep. And like you said, it wouldn't be a big deal if it was just like, oh, we're going to remove your federal funding. I'm pretty sure Harvard's like, yeah, as much as we appreciate it, we don't really give a shit about your federal funding. It's like nothing compared to the billions. They get billions of dollars in endowments. But now when you're talking about taking away tax exempt status, like specifically, it enters a whole different realm because Harvard might be affected a little bit by it. I mean, I'm sure they have reserves of endowment money, but and they can outlast the Trump presidency. I feel like a lot of people feel like that, but it isn't just Harvard, and it also just sets a dangerous precedent because now the next president that comes in, they can do the same thing, right? That's what the scary thing. It's like if he's allowed to do this, then what happens next? That's principally what I'm concerned with. I will say I gain a little bit of respect for Harvard because I'm not really a fan of elite Ivy League schools, and the fact that they all decided like to push back against this, and the president now being Jewish, being like, "You're full of shit. There's no anti-Semitism going on here. Like we're going to stand by our students. We're going to stand by our students' right to protest. We're going to stand by our Palestinian students and our Muslim students and our Arab students." And we're not going to let you pit us against each other and use money and ideology to do so. I gained a little bit of respect for him because I thought they were going to fold, and they did not. And even though Trump is clearly trying to make an example out of them, because he's like refusing to talk about other schools around the country. Like they talked about Columbia because of Khalil, right? They're talking about Harvard, obviously, because it's Harvard. They had that issue, and he's focused on the former black president, but refuses to acknowledge the fact that the current Jewish white president is on her side. Basically, it holds the same beliefs in that regard, and he's trying to make examples out of elite schools, and that it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope because we know these presidents, whether or not people want to admit it, Democrat or Republican, they tend to follow each other. Like whenever Trump was calling people domestic terrorists, and then his like during the BLM protests, especially the George Floyd protests, he was calling all the protesters domestic terrorists, and then his people were going along with it. I said, y'all are stupid as shit. Y'all do know once Biden gets in, that's gonna fall right back on y'all. So what happened with January 6th? Oh, they're all domestic terrorists, all of them. Yep. Why? Because Trump just set that precedent. If you protest and the president doesn't like it, you're not a domestic terrorist. It can be treated as such. And people, just like during the BLM protests, were being held without arraignments, were being held without bail, were being held without being charged with anything, using the same policy that Trump set up. So this is what happens. Democrat or Republican, there will be consequences if Trump's allowed to continue on like this.
Yep. And this is why people say the Democratic Party should be pushing back in other ways, right? Like there's other things that they can do, but they're not willing to do it. And that's another thing. But it is a very scary time because, to your point, everyone keeps saying, oh, it's Harvard, who cares? But it's not just Harvard, right? They're starting with Harvard. So like to Nico's point, that sets the precedent. If they're willing to start with the top school in the country, what makes you think they're not going to go after the schools that are like ranked 156th?
Yep. Especially those schools, right? Because those schools, like the majority of the students are going to go to those types of schools. The majority of the world isn't going to Harvard or Yale, right? It's the schools in the middle that will suffer. Like they need the endowments that they get. Even like, so I went to UNC, and UNC is heavily reliant on state and federal funding and endowment money, like because they try their hardest to help people who might be financially incapable of going there without assistance. Like UNC would be ruined in years if this was allowed to continue. And it's one of the top schools in the country. And so there are others that aren't even in that type of bracket of education or institutional education anyway, that would be wiped out in a couple of years. Like they're going, they're from year to year trying to get by. And basically they would have to shut down all protests. You wouldn't be allowed to express yourself. You would have to change the way you teach classes. Like it would basically be like kind of what happens in public school for the most part right now, right? Especially if you live in the South. I'm sure the way you might have learned about slavery in New York is definitely not the way that we learned about it in the South. Like I always told people, being in North Carolina, I didn't even know Fred Hampton was a co-founder of the Black Panthers until I was an adult, even though like, I was like, that's kind of weird to leave that fucking part out, right? Like, how are you going to talk about we talk about the Black Panthers. We talk about Huey P. Newton, right? But like, we never talked about Fred Hampton. We never. High school, and I took AP US. I took all the history class you could think of. Never learned about Fred Hampton. Like, nope. So that's what we're on the way to seeing. And like, we're talking about the erasure of a genocide out of history books, people. Like that's what they're going to, because that's what they're pushing basically. Not only erasure of a genocide, but the supremacy of a nation and the justification of their supremacy. Like that is a terrifying thought, considering like eventually I'm sure some of y'all, like a lot of y'all want your kids to go to college one day, right? Like, and you want them to be taught like, yeah, Israel is a supremacist nation. Like, because yeah, we're all aware of what's going on right now. But look how quickly the Armenian genocide got erased. Like people found out about that later. Look how quickly, or look how long it took for people to know about Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Black Wall Street. Look at how people don't even know about the genocide in Congo, right? Committed by Belgium that committed the genocide. Like people don't even know about this stuff because it was useful for people, or it was intentional. That's my opinion anyway. Because right, how can you focus so much on the Holocaust but not know about the genocide in Congo? How can you focus on the Holocaust but not talk about the Armenian genocide? The Armenian genocide is ignored because the U.S. helped facilitate the Armenian genocide, right? So the Palestinian genocide eventually will be ignored. Maybe not this year, maybe not in 10 years, but in 20, 30, 40 years, the Palestinian genocide, if this type of stuff is allowed to continue, will be ignored. Why? Because the U.S. helped facilitate it. So, and they're not going to want to be attached to it. And if Trump's allowed to do this, that's probably what will happen. It'll slowly be erased from the history books, like the apartheid itself in Palestine and Israel has been erased from the history books.
Yeah, what you guys are seeing happening right now will not be in the history books for sure. Like or the narrative will be very different.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like Nico was saying, like when we were in school and we learned about the Black Panthers. No, they didn't. Fred Hampton wasn't in my history book
at all, which is like, that's so crazy. Like now that I know about the story, you're like, motherfucker, he was murdered by the cops and as a co-founder at 21 years old, and y'all don't think it was important to talk about him? They didn't even
tell us, like, honestly, back then I remember they didn't even tell us that the Black Panthers did mutual aid. They didn't tell us they set up, like they built clinics or anything like that. The way it was written in our history book was that the Black Panthers were a militant, radical group. And they were trying to fight against the police and all that kind of stuff. And this is why sometimes, like, you know, one of the things I appreciate about my grandmother was pretty honest about like some of the things that happened back then. Like she was the first one that told me that during the civil rights movement, even a lot of Black people weren't happy with MLK and what he was trying to do. My grandma told me that.
Mm-hmm. My grandma told me the same thing. My grandma was like, there were probably a lot more Black people aligned with Malcolm X and the Black Panthers than MLK because they wanted him to they wanted MLK to, and of course, what people often forget is that MLK ended up being closer to Malcolm X by the time he died than and Malcolm X, he softened up a little bit and tried to see MLK's side as well. But that Black Panther situation was crazy because, like you said, they described I remember pretty vividly them being described as a militia group, them trying to kind of group the history books, trying to group him with Malcolm X as like this violent guy who just only thought things could be our violent group rather that thought things could only be resolved through violence. And it was and that was only because Black Panthers were talking about like protecting themselves, empowering themselves through the Second Amendment, like any other American should be able to. Talking about community, not being willing to put up with the violence that came their way. Like that was the only reason that they described. And I don't even think that, technically speaking, Black Panthers called themselves a militia, but they were described as one. And then, of course, the history books made sure to mention that they were a domestic terrorist organization, or they were labeled a domestic terrorist organization. Made sure to say that. But like no mention of Fred Hampton, because obviously if you dig deep enough, then you'll figure out like, oh shit, like they were legally found guilty. The government was legally found guilty of plotting his murder. So,
So
if you find that out, then you go down that rabbit hole. Then it don't stop there. So his man was an informant. Like it goes crazy. It gets deep, and then you got to figure out why. Then you start figuring out about how he united Black people and white people and how they were doing mutual aid. More than anything, it was mutual aid. Yeah, they try to protect yourselves, but they were more focused on community. That was what they were more focused on. So you don't want, and we're getting into a world now, we're in an age of information where you can obviously go look up the truth if you want to seek it out. But at the end of the day, like we don't want to spend all of our time having to correct our kids after they learn something false in school, because that's really like a lot of the time, that's what people are doing now. You're having to, you learn this, like Christopher Columbus, like we shouldn't have Columbus Day, but we have one, and here's why, but here's the truth. It's a lot to keep up with. So like the indoctrination has to stop, and this is it's getting scary. I ain't gonna lie. I didn't think that Trump would actually go as far as he's been going recently. I'll be honest with you, Sabby. It's a lot. It's like he's trying to pretend like he's in control. So he's like trying to goad his base into these like racial qualms, this SJW bullshit. Of course, obviously doing a lot of it on behalf of Israel, but just even a lot of just the race baiting that we've been seeing lately. It's been like over the top to the point where you're like, hey, bro, are you trying to hide something? Like, is something going on? Are you realizing actually for the first time that you don't actually have control over shit like you thought you did? Because that's my opinion. I believe that's what the tariffs were about too, which is a whole different conversation. He went over the top with these tariffs, trying to prove that he's in control of an international community that he's no longer in control of like he thought he was. He thought he can come in, I'm going to fix the war in Ukraine. I'm going to fix the situation in Gaza and Israel. I'm going to fix the situation with China. And then when he realized that he actually couldn't do it, he's like, well, let me try to show a force and see how people react. And it's like, it didn't go the way he thought it would. Because it just, everything just seemed like a desperate attempt to distract from the fact that he's no longer in control. And he's realizing it and freaking the fuck out, basically.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I knew he would be bad, but good grief. Like,
and getting Joe Biden, like, I'm telling people, like, he's starting to look more and more like Joe Biden every day. Even his speeches, like, he was way sharper in 2016 and in 2020. Right now, like, he will lie like 3 times in like 30 seconds. And it's like, usually he knows he's lying. But this is different. I know. I remember Trump from 2016. People think that he's being cheeky. And, oh, no, he's being tongue in cheeky. He's just being funny. And I'm like, I don't think so, guys. I think that he actually might be. He old too, right? We all get it. It eventually happens to everybody. People forget. And he's old and has been active and engaged and on his feet and involved in a bunch of legal cases here, political situations there, 3 elections now. That's a huge toll on the mind and the body. Right? Who's to say that he's not suffering from mental decline as well?
Oh boy. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.